Welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root, where we dive deep into understanding and addressing root causes of chronic health issues so you can help and find healing inside and out, now and forever. Hello, and welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root. I'm Megan Abbott, owner and founder of the holistic health practice at Trifecta Collective. Welcome to the podcast. So today, I would like to talk about I'm naming this episode, I think, Achieving the Life You Want Without Burning Out. But I struggled with the naming of this, and even Andy and I went back and forth at talking about this generalized topic and what do we want to name this? How do I really want to phrase how I talk about this? But talking about like hustling for to trying to achieve a new goal, going through like big periods of time of like being really busy, whether that's like family busy, whether that's work busy, really like building, creating something, doing all of this stuff without burning out. And so I think as a general encapsulation of all of this, I decided to go with achieving the life you want without the burnout. And, for me, just a little bit of background in case you do not know or have not heard me talk about this before. So I started running my first company at 22. And then in the sales field, and I did that from like 22 until about 25, 26. And then I moved full-time into the fitness industry and was a full-time fitness manager, general manager of a large big box gym, and then moved into managing a mobile personal training company and then became part owner of that company before starting this company. So I've had many non-traditional jobs. I have done a lot of building and growing businesses, especially. And I have also burned myself out far more times than I would like to admit. And so I want to talk through how do we do this? What does this really look like? Things to consider, things to take into account. And I'm also coming at this from, like one business side of things, but also, the last several years for me have been pretty crazy, pretty wild, pretty stressful. 2024, I made some major life decisions to get a divorce, to sell my house, to leave where I had been my entire adult life. Last year, my now fiance got diagnosed with cancer. We went through cancer treatment and like all of that while also running a business. So, I share this just to give you, I'm going to share a lot of personal stories as always. And also, I also understand that I am not perfect in case that was ever unclear. I really try and make sure I get that across. Like, by no means am I perfect. And I do my best to practice what I preach and to talk through these things. And I have learned time and time again how really easy it is, especially as a female, especially as someone with a history of chronic illness issues, how life and stress can really sneak up on you, and you can really fairly easily go into a state of burnout. And I also want to talk about some of the consequences of getting into burnout that will hopefully, if in case you need it, provide some almost incentives, if we want to call it. I'm not even sure that's the right word, but incentives to not get that far. And a lot of the consequences, once again, especially if you have a history of chronic illness issues, even if you don't, and once again, we have really shifted all of our messaging and audience and who we're really talking to is to women. And what I want to tell you, especially as a 36-year-old female, how easy it is to go into perimenopause, how awful perimenopause really can be especially if you are coming at this from a state of burnout. And here's the reality of what I have personally seen working with thousands of women in the health and wellness industry over the years. Most women, especially that we see, especially within, our current practice, we are coming up on our 4-year anniversary, or I'm sorry, our 6-year anniversary, here very, very soon, in less than a month of our official date. And man, this is a heavy hitter. If you are, especially let's say 35 to 50, this is particularly important. And this is a going into perimenopause, which by the way, women have always gone through. Women will always go through. We're also not the only species on Earth that goes through perimenopause. There's a couple other ones. Why is this such a nightmare for us, especially now? And I think part of the reason why now is because there is more education, more information, more light, more funding, thankfully, more research, more information backing up women going through perimenopause and understanding what this really looks like, what this really feels like, and how we can support our bodies. And I say bodies, physical, mental, emotional bodies, all of them through this process. And I think it has been a challenge for women even before us. For reference, we've seen that in how it's been portrayed, especially on shows. Even I think back to growing up and like when was my mom going through perimenopause? What did that look like for her? Like, what kind of support did she get, if any? Like, obviously there are some complications with my looking at this from my own mother because she was an alcoholic by the time she got into perimenopause 100%, and that throws off things wildly as well. And also, like what could have been exacerbated by her going through perimenopause? What did that really look like? And she's no longer around, so I can't ask her of what this really looked like and felt like for her and different things like that. But I can try my best, and my memory is not perfect from childhood because of the trauma side of things. But I can think back to different things and be like, oh, I wonder if that, like some of that was perimenopausal related. And she was just really struggling, and she was already struggling because she was an alcoholic. And where did that come from? And, we can backtrack all the things. And coming back to now, most women, by the time they get to perimenopause, are in so complete burnout stage that I do think, and I've got science, if we think about the physiology of this, and I'm going to talk about that, why this is such a nightmare. And I will tell you, even if you are way before that, stress impacts our body so much, and burnout can really cause a lot of stress. I also think this is playing a role in some, not all, in some issues in trying to conceive. And women who are really struggling with that, women with a lot of hormone imbalances just overall, whether that's diagnosed as, like a PCOS, endometriosis, whatever it may be. But also, if you've got heavy, painful periods, if ovulation is a nightmare for you, if things just feel off, if your mental and emotional health feels off, if you feel tired all the time, like these can all be signs of burnout. Now, not exclusively, we want to look at the list all together and how someone's presenting, but burnout will make everything worse across the board, from a physical health, from also like mental and emotional health. It makes everything worse. So how do we hustle? How do we grind? How do we build a life that we want and do our best to take care of ourselves? And, I've talked to, I don't remember hearing this as often as I'm hearing it so far this year. But one of the things I'm really hearing, especially in consults right now, in the free consultations that we do, is this is the year I want to prioritize myself. I want to prioritize my health. The year that I'm taking charge of my own body again, or for the first time in my life. And I'm hearing these phrases very, very consistently right now, which makes me so happy in the just awareness that is coming up around how we really are. Most women, we're burning the candle from both ends. And most of us don't even realize it until we're in the middle and we have nothing left. And we have all of these symptoms that are coming up. And now we have no choice. Our body is not giving us a choice anymore to continue on the way that we have been. And we have to make a change. So, how do we find, I don't like the word balance. How do we find the balance between that? Because I don't think balance really exists. But how do we navigate this? And how do we achieve the life we want while also not burning ourselves out completely and not having all of these physical symptoms? And how do we do this? One thing I will say is everyone is different. So take what I'm going to share in this episode and what feels good for you. If something feels like really not good for you and you're like totally appalled by it or have like very strong reactions, I would also invite you to take a look at that, because sometimes when we have these like, that is absolutely not me, those kind of reactions, sometimes it's really hardcore us. And I say this from personal experience and things that I have said, things that I have thought in the past, and I look back now and I'm like, my goodness, that I should have listened to myself and then like, man, this is a major red flag for me that I'm bringing up, that is coming up for me, that I need to take a deeper look at, that I may not want to acknowledge, and it is playing a role. And by the way, not everything will apply to everyone here. And of course, this episode is geared more towards women and women's health and burnout, because we are more sensitive to this, for reference. And I'm going to talk about that too. And not saying that this won't apply to anyone else either, because yeah, there's a lot of things that I'm going to talk about that relate to just about everyone. So I think, kind of baseline, we need to understand where we're starting from. And are we starting from a deficit already? If you are already experiencing symptoms, chronic symptoms, and typically we say chronic symptoms are symptoms that have been around for 3 months or longer. Yeah, I think we could argue a month or two versus 3 months in some cases. And I also know sometimes we don't even realize we're dealing with something until enough things have kind of snowballed and we have like all of these handful of symptoms. And then when we think back, you're like, when did this start? Because that is one question I always ask during consults. When did this start? And that can be a hard question to really answer, because they're like, well, some of the stuff I thought was normal and I've been experiencing most of my life. And then it wasn't until like enough things were starting to go seemingly wrong, or I felt not enough like myself, that I started to notice all of these things. Sleep issues are a big one. And we can say like, oh, that can be trauma related, that can be anxiety related, that can be certainly like there are physical things that can be happening. If we've got adrenal issues, we're probably waking up at like 3 a.m. If we're consistently waking up between like 1 and 2:30, like that could be more liver related. If it's between like 4 and 5, we might be having like some lung stuff. We also might be having like histamine dumps going on. All of these things can happen, and we need to like, once again, peel back the layers, and symptoms can absolutely overlap. But sleep issues, chronic fatigue, just you're like, I just don't have good energy. Like, you should wake up in the morning and feel well rested. And like, not that you need to like jump out of bed, but you should get out of bed with some decent energy. You should have decently sustained energy throughout the day. No, you're not going to feel, like super high on top of the world at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, as some people who do at like 9 a.m. And some people, like, some of our schedules are a little bit different. For me, like, early afternoon is typically my best time. Like, that is when I'm most alert. It is when my brain works the best. It is when I'm the most on. And that is just how my body works. And that is okay. It's not saying I don't have good energy or brain function in the morning, because I do, not super early, but you give me enough time. And I can also work pretty late and still have pretty good energy and function and things like that. And I also have optimal times that my brain and body and energy works, and that is okay. And my energy is pretty consistent on a day-to-day basis. So that is obviously a good sign for me. Other big signs. What are your hormones doing? Digestion would be another one. So hormones and digestion are two things that can be impacted by a lot of things. Stress, especially chronic stress, is a massive one. Anytime I start to notice shifts in my digestion, and that might look like changes in bowel movements, that might look like bloating, that might look like acid reflux or heartburn or gas or belching, any of those changes can definitely indicate an issue or a shift or the beginning of a change. Same thing with hormones. Hormones are incredibly sensitive and very sensitive to stress. If your cycles are getting shorter, if your cycles are getting longer, if your cycles are getting heavier, if they're getting really short and really light, if you're noticing increased symptoms around ovulation, right before your period, during your period, all of those things can be indications of chronic stress that can eventually lead to burnout. And so one of the things that can be really, really helpful in building the life you want and working towards these goals is having this prerequisite of being connected to your physical body. And I'm not talking obsessive. I'm not talking like every time you get bloated, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm dying. I have SIBO. I have a stomach ulcer. I have cancer. No, I'm not talking that. I'm talking awareness, gentle awareness. Now, if you have any or all of those thoughts that come up to you, please go back and listen to the Understanding and Working Through Health Anxiety episode that came out just a couple weeks ago. Great episode to talk through that piece a little bit more. But when we understand why these things are often impacted, it can be very helpful. So when we're to get to a state of burnout, we have to be in stress for a very long period of time. That eventually leads to depletion. Stress typically is going to look at where eventually, not at the beginning, but at some point, we're going to end up in a state of chronic fight, flight, fawn, freeze for most of us. And once we get there and we're stuck, burnout typically is not far behind. And so if we can start to detect early on shifts and changes that are happening in our body and coming at this from a place of curiosity versus judgment or health anxiety, this can help us be aware of when we're starting to get to a place and we need to start to make some shifts. Let me give you an example. Last year, so my fiance, Jonathan, got diagnosed in early March with cancer, stage 2 Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer. He was having symptoms for months prior to that, and we were already feeling the stress of that. Then we had about 3 weeks of all of these tasks, all of these things happening, a lot of traveling back and forth, an hour and a half in each direction from where we were staying and where we've been living. And plus he was like feeling worse and worse. And then we started treatment. A lot goes into that. If you've ever supported someone going through chemo, I mean, you will understand. And then also being a caretaker while also still running a business, still doing all of the things. One of the first signs pretty early on that started to happen is my hormones started to shift. And I talked about this last year, probably a month or two after it started to happen, maybe 2.5 months after it started to happen. And I was noticing I was going back into perimenopause. I was having warm flashes, not full on hot flashes, but warm flashes. My cycles were starting to get shorter. They were starting to get, like, I was starting to get more symptoms 7 to 10 days before my period. I was starting to get more irritable and just feeling really low. My sleep wasn't as good. And some of these symptoms just started to like pile up. And it took me a minute to like step back from the day-to-day stress and be like, whoa, okay. There's some stuff going on. There's some shifts, and I need to start supporting my body differently. And I did. And I still had many, many months left of being under this chronic stress. So, like, some of this stuff, there are certain circumstances where there are not controllables, in which case we need to find some ways to support our body. For me, that looked like some supplements to help and support my body, and there was some playing around with supplements. It ended up being Chastry for me personally. That was really helpful because my progesterone was just like dropping so much. I mean, all of my hormones dropped for reference, but my progesterone specifically, like really, really, really dropped. And it's now in a much better place. I'm still doing some tweaking with that, and it's in a much better place than it was previously. This looked like taking some additional sleep support during that time, not only the chastity, but also like additional sleep support. This looked like, what else did I do? I did a craniosacral massage. I got an energy healing session from like one of my mentors. Changing up some of my mindfulness kind of practices, changing up my workouts, like I stopped working. I stopped doing weightlifting and started just doing walking and stretching and some band work. Like that's all my body could really handle. The stress, while it was a good stress of working out, like it was a stress I could control and it had to go for a period of time. By the way, it is still not fully back on. I am now, just now, like within the last couple of weeks, feeling like, okay, I think my body's actually ready and I'm willing to try it again. I have tried it a handful of times and it has impacted my sleep pretty systemically, which means I've gotten an unnatural cortisol spike and it's been too stressful for my body, even of what I would consider a very light workout. So, it's like control your controllables, especially if you're under a circumstance of like family stress and situation, like there's only so much you can do. There are some uncontrollables that we literally have no control over. And so it's like, what else needs to go? And how can you start noticing some of the more subtle signs and symptoms that things are shifting and changing? And then what actions can you take to lower your stress? Because this is really the name of the game. We cannot be under constant stress, constant high stress all of the time. That is not feasible. For example, for me last year, there was an end date. We had 12 treatments to go through, and like then we were done. Not that I was going to be recovered right away, but like then that piece was complete and done. And so like the stress load started to drop, which is exactly what I needed. And it has taken me several months after the fact to continue to work on myself to get my body back into a really good spot. And there's been some obstacles here and there in between that have not helped, and it's okay. It's okay. My body's still continuing to heal. I'm still not back in the place that I was back in the day. I'm still not having the chronic symptoms that I was having, and I feel like I'm getting better week over week, even if it's really small and subtle changes. I also acknowledge, for me, from a work perspective, December and January were crazy. I mean, my schedule was way, way, way overpacked. And it happens. And here's the thing, my work schedule is not always like that. And so there is controllables within that of like, cool, I've got 2 months where I really need to power through and I'm working a lot and I am borderline going to burn out and I'm going to make sure I don't actually end up there. 2 months and that was it. Once February hit, I said, I'm done. I can't keep doing it. I'm done and I've got to shift my schedule. And I did. And I made it happen. So the thing is, like, we can't handle this chronic stress. So you've got to work on going through phases. And if you don't have an end date on certain things, like we've got to add in some additional support. Like you've got to make some changes and shifts as you go until things can really be different. And here's the thing, like, I know, I get it. I know what it's like running a business. I know what it's like being a female single entrepreneur. I know what it's like having a whole job and then also building a business on the side. Like, I've done it. I've did it. I've been there, and I will tell you, like, your health is not worth it to go to that place. And so you've got to have cycles of, yeah, your body can handle stress. Your body can take it. It cannot take it forever, though. And you will hit a wall. And the goal is to stop before you hit the wall so that you can have a almost like a pause where you're still continuing, but you're not grinding as hard. So you get to the point of burnout, but like you can push some limits here, but then you got to back off and then like give yourself like some space to kind of back off a little bit and then you can push it. And so like going through these cycles is the most effective way that I have found to prevent burnout, being a high achiever, and I'm going to say two other things. So cross out the and. Maintain your health or continue to improve your health because yes, you can do that during this. And I forgot what my previous first one was. And build the life that you want. And like do all these things, but without actually burning out. And going through like intense phases of burning out because I'll tell you like what it takes to backtrack from a burnout versus what taking a little bit of a step back, way different. It is a way different experience. I'll tell you, like for me personally, anytime I burn out, and by the way, I mean, I used to do this multiple times a year, multiple times a year. I mean, like 3 to 5 times a year. I'd be in complete burnout. And it takes months. It takes months to come back from this. And it's, once again, it's not worth it because then you have to pull back and you have no choice because you cannot keep up. And so if you have a little bit of control over some of this and kind of go through a little bit of these like cycles or periods of really high stress, but then you need to back off just a little bit, like that is the most effective way to really do this. And couple big things that like if you maybe don't have an end date or you're struggling with cycling, I'm also going to talk to people like I cannot take a break because I've also been you and I have some things to say about it. But even before that, how do we support our bodies through these higher periods of stress? I'll tell you, like, the number one thing is take care of your adrenals, especially as a woman, because your adrenals will impact your sleep, your hormones, digestion, thyroid, among many, many, many other things. Hair, skin, physical body, like all of the things. So one of the most effective things that I've seen, especially for women long term going through these periods of stress, adrenal cocktails. They're so simple. They're so easy. Yes, you can buy these things in supplement form, but also like just go make your own. There's tons of recipes. We'll share Coconuts and Kettlebells. Noelle Tar, who owns Coconuts and Kettlebells, she's also an NTP. She has a great like recipe list of adrenal cocktails and what this can look like. I'll typically recommend doing those first thing in the morning upon waking for most people. And now some people do 2 a day. That is totally fine if what works best for you. Some people take it later morning, some people take it early afternoon. Just kind of depends, but I'll typically recommend most people start it just right when you wake up, drink your adrenal cocktail, and go about your day. And that way you get it in. It'll help you sustain. Like I know for me, it helps me sustain my energy throughout the day a bit better. I don't get necessarily like a boost of energy. Some people do, but I just notice more sustained energy throughout the day. And once again, like I have a long history of all kinds of adrenal issues we can call it adrenal fatigue. We can call it like burnout. We can call it, just like cortisol dysregulation. Like I've seen it all. I've had inverse curves. I've had straight lines instead of a curve. I've had everything low. I've had everything high. And take care of your adrenals. So adrenal cocktails, number 1. Number 2 would be magnesium glycinate at night. These two things help to naturally support your cortisol curve. So your cortisol curve, things should be higher in the morning, things should be lower at night. And the supports are like being awake and alert and like being a person first thing in the morning and then throughout the day, and then helping us get good sleep throughout the night. So those are two simple things that anytime I am going into a higher period of stress time, I'm doing adrenal cocktails, I'm absolutely doing magnesium glycinate. Those are non-negotiables. And that is for my adrenal health. Another non-negotiable is liver support. And it really depends. For some people, like this might look like a supplement. It might be easier in that form, in which case that's fine. Sometimes it is for me. I'll say Advanced TEDCA from Cellcore is my go-to liver support. It's really good for brain drainage. It's good for liver health. It's good for digestion. There's a lot of bonuses for using Advanced TEDCA, specifically the one from Cellcore, because that one is scientifically proven to help the brain drain, which can be really good, helps with mental clarity. If you're working a lot, during my busy periods of time, I'm typically working at the computer even more, in which case I might have more rounded shoulders or forward head, in which case I might have more tension in the back of my skull through my neck into my upper shoulders. And that can inhibit or limit some of your brain's ability to drain overnight. If you're also not getting good sleep, your brain is not draining appropriately. And this can result in cognitive issues, brain fog, trouble concentrating, memory issues, like all of that kind of stuff that can play a role. Hormones can also play a role for reference, and so can gut health. So supporting my liver, this also a lot of times for me will look like castor oil packs. I can just throw them on for either all of the day or part of the day when I'm on calls or doing things. And that's a pretty easy one because I don't have to do much other than actually just put it on. I don't have to like go to a sauna. I don't have to like go to a place or like spend an hour doing a coffee enema or anything. Not that all of those things are really good. And if talking about time and efficiency, castor oil pack can be really, really easy. So those can be options, but definitely supporting your liver. Supporting the liver is good for your adrenals. It's good for your hormone health. It's good for your gut health and just overall inflammatory response as well. So I'll always do some liver support. And then I'll usually do some gut support, but really in the form of just like overall digestion. And because one of the first things that's going to go down when stress goes up, stomach acid levels start to go down. And stomach acid levels going down can result in heartburn and acid reflux, but it also presents a breeding ground for gut overgrowth issues. And no, thank you. I do not want to deal with those again. I'm not trying to deal with those. So I'll add in some like stomach acid support. For me, that'll often look like HCl with pepsin. There's quite a few brands out there. Typically the one I'll get is Pure Encapsulations. Designs for Health also has a really good one. Pure Encapsulations is a little cheaper. So I will usually do that one and I can get just like a giant bottle and just have it on hand and it lasts me a while. So that's another thing that I will often do. Some people, that may look more like a broad spectrum digestive enzyme. It just kind of depends on the person. But I do think some digestive support can be a really good idea. I'll also say if I start to get mildly constipated, that is something I fix right off the bat because I'm not reabsorbing toxins. Like I'm not trying to put any extra stress on my body, on my liver. Like, no, thank you. So I always have something on hand. For me, that typically looks like Bowel Mover from Cellcore. For some people, that might look like magnesium citrate. I'll say for me, magnesium citrate, that is not what my body typically needs. It usually gives me a lot of cramping and just like discomfort versus the Bowel Mover helps with more motility and helps to stimulate movement so the bowels can actually like flow and come out of your body versus just softening them. For some people, that might look like a tea, like a smooth moves tea kind of thing. Sometimes the castor oil pack honestly just does it enough that can be very supportive too. So there's a lot of different options here, but focusing on basic support of your body goes a really long way. And once again, like preventing burnout, but also helping you recover from these periods of stress longer. I think another thing we really need to think about is when we go through these high periods of stress, like, what can we take out? Because listen, I know a lot of us, especially if you are around my age, a little bit older, a little bit younger, like, I felt like women, like growing up, the portrayal of women was really to be superheroes. And like women can work, women can be anything. They can have a family, they can like do all the things and like they're a superhero and they're amazing, which is like great and awesome, except our bodies weren't built to do everything all of the time and to be these superheroes. So then we also need to take kind of a hard look at our lives and what can go. And sometimes those are really hard choices. You know, for me last year, I'll tell you, giving up the gym, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm just giving up the gym. Like, this is great. I don't have to work out anymore. I hadn't gone more than a week or two without lifting in over a decade. That was not and continues to not be an easy decision for me. And it had to go. It was a stressor, and I was getting active signs from my body saying it was too much. A walk that was too long, I also got some of those signs at some points. So we have to listen. We have to learn how to listen to our bodies and what is too much and what is okay. Working out is a stressor. It is a really good one, and it is good for so many things. And we may need to reevaluate what that looks like under these really significant periods of stress. And sometimes that might need to look like walking. Sometimes that might need to look like stretching. Sometimes that might need to look like yin yoga. Sometimes that might need to look like doing almost nothing and just giving our bodies a chance to chill the F out for a while. And that is okay. The goal here is not to get stuck in any one position or place. And so for me, I know, and I knew when I made the decision to stop working out, or when my body told me the decision was, you can no longer work out right now, that this was temporary. And it's like, okay, it is temporary. I am going to control my controllables and do the best that I can with the resources that I have right now. And so that was the reality. You know, it also looked like asking for help from my team, my work team, asking for different helps personally and in different areas of where can I ask for help. And I'll tell you, as an only child, the eldest daughter, as the eldest grandmother, or granddaughter, as the eldest, as the parent growing up, like I hate asking for help. I hate it. I'm the rebel. As soon as someone's like, oh, like I can help you with that, like you can't do it. Do you want to see? I will prove you wrong. And I'm very aware that I can still, that is a default pattern that will pop up for me. If someone says, like, can you do this? Like, you can do it, or I need you to do this, or like, you can't do that. I'm immediately going like, I can do it all by myself. I will do it all by myself. We were never meant to live our lives all by ourselves. We need help. We need friends. We need family, born family, chosen family, whatever it may be. We need help, paid help. I've paid for other people to come in and help me with different things, whether that's like mental and emotional support, whether that's, physical support, whether it's, that might be like running errands or whatever it may be. Like, you can't do everything yourself, and we were never designed to do that. And if you still hold that belief very close to you, I will tell you, it will bite you in the butt. It may not be right now, but I promise you at some point in time, if it hasn't already, it will bite you in the butt. And we need to ask for help. When things are hard, when life is stressful, we need to ask for help. And I know that can be really, really challenging and can feel really bad. And once again, like, we weren't made to do everything all by ourselves all of the time. If you work full time and have a family and you are doing everything, you are doing the cooking, the cleaning, childcare, like keeping track of all the schedules and working a full time job, like, you need help. Where can you find that? Can you find community help? Like, you need help. We can't live these lives being a superhero. Our bodies aren't built for it. Women are more susceptible to burnout than men, largely because of our hormones. And I'll tell you, largely because progesterone exists within our bodies, and stress and progesterone go in the opposite direction. Stress goes up, progesterone goes down, which makes our ability to handle stress goes down. Like, biologically, we cannot handle the same amount of stress as male bodies. That is the reality of the situation. And our society is built on a man's 24-hour cycle versus a women's quote unquote 28-day cycle. And we need to have some awareness around that. And we need to be able to take a look at ourselves and our lives and situations and different things and know that we can handle these periods of high stress and we cannot handle them forever. So where can you outsource? Where can you ask for help? What can drop? And I'm not saying these decisions are easy, by the way. Some of these you have to require sacrifices. And that, once again, like, that is the reality of the situation. Sometimes we need to extend our timelines on different things because of this. And what I will tell you, having been in this place so many times myself and also working with so many women who also go through these same cycles, is that it's never worth it. Whatever it is, it's never worth it to put yourself and your health in a massive, massive hole and a massive deficit. It's not worth it, whatever it is. And so we really need to look at this. And I'll tell you, within our practice, we look at 5 main areas. We look at nutrition, lifestyle, movement, nervous system, and then targeted and limited supplementation for like bigger root causes of things going on. And where a lot of people get stuck is when they don't want to or choose not to really look at themselves internally from a stress, trauma, nervous system, mindfulness perspective. I will also tell you that working on that side of things actually gives you more capacity to handle more stress. And a lot of people get stuck. A lot of women get stuck and they're like, these supplements aren't working. This diet's not working. Not that we do a lot of restrictive dieting within our practice, but we do get a lot of women come to us and they're eating, 6 to 10 foods, and that is their diet. And that is very stressful. We also need to understand that that is very stressful. And so we need to look at all of these things and also look at our capacity. And, we can go through periods of stress. We can do this. But also, how can we, especially when we're not going through like really high periods of stress, how can we increase our capacity to handle more stress so that when we want and or need to go through these really big periods of high stress in our lives, once again, for whatever reason, we don't lead ourselves into burnout. And I'll tell you, I have so much more capacity now than I did 10 years ago when I was going through all of my stuff. I had no capacity at that point in time. I mean, I had, I like my little pepper bucket analogy. I had a tiny little teacup that I was working out of capacity, in which case, of course, I'm going to burn out so easily with that versus taking enough things out of that bucket, but also going from a teacup to a bowl to a bucket, like increasing my capacity to handle these things. And largely, by the way, that looked like nervous system, emotional, trauma, mindfulness work while also supporting my physical body and doing all of those things. And a lot of the things that I already mentioned, some of these basic things of supporting adrenal health and hormone health and digestive health and, drainage pathways and different things like that. Super helpful. And all of those things help to increase our capacity and or take things out of the bucket, which are both very beneficial going through these things. I think I'm going to leave it there. I think the last kind of note that I just want to share is around perimenopause. And, one of the reasons why, once again, like why perimenopause, I think hits so hard for so many women nowadays is because we are burned out. We're tired, this whole like movement around like all of your nurturing hormones, this newfound, I don't give an F kind of attitude that can come up around perimenopause. Some of those things are from burnout for reference. We don't have to totally get rid of all of these nurturing and caring and loving and compassionate emotions. We don't have to turn into this rage monster, this irritability monster. Part of that is because so many, almost all women, not all, almost all women are coming from such a deficit in the first place that now this becomes a nightmare. And so if you are between the ages of, once again, like 35 to 50, and you're really pushing for some lofty goals, you have some big periods of stress really coming up, like be careful is is my advice. Really, really try to listen to your body. Be aware of the subtle changes going on because they are communications from your body to you. And if you listen to what your body's really asking for and start to communicate back to your body, this can go a long way in not only like your longevity and being able to handle stress, but also how bad you could or could not feel going through all of this. And once again, we can't do this thing. Like, we can't be in this constant achieving mode 24/7, 365 days a year for years on end. Doesn't work like that. Our bodies do not work like that. And once again, you might be disagreeing with me right now, which is totally okay. And you might be like, Megan, I'm totally handling it. I've been doing it my whole life. It will catch up to you. I was the same way. I see so many of the women we work with have the same mentality coming into this. And oftentimes, it's not until it does catch up with them that we have to take a step back. And now we really have to take a step back and look at some things. So I get it. I understand. And we need to go through seasons and we need to have quote unquote downtime seasons where it's not quite as busy, where we can focus a little bit more on ourselves, our health, our wellness, on increasing our capacity to handle stress, on taking things out of our bucket that we can, because this is how you be a high achiever and build things and create things and achieve the life you want long term. It cannot be a constant grind. Got to go through seasons. You've got to go through phases and you've got to figure out a way. And oftentimes, once again, this means making some hard decisions, some really challenging decisions about where and how you spend your time and what this really looks like. I hope you got something out of this. And I know for all of you high achievers and all you like crazy, powerful, amazing women that are out there, I know so many of you will resonate and feel with so much of this, and know that once again, like we work with so many of these women. And if you ever need help, support, we are always here. We offer free consultations, and this is a population that we heavily work in. And I know all of our practitioners, including myself, and I'll also throw Andy in here too, we've all been there. We've all experienced this. We've all had to come out from it. We've all been forced to slow down and make a lot of changes in our lives as a result of extreme burnout. And I know and I'm saying this pretty confidently for all of us, that it's happened many times, more times, once again, than we'd like to admit. And it doesn't have to be like that. If you choose to make this a seasonal thing and not an all the time thing, and also find some ways to basic support for your body, this can go a really, really long way. Thank you for listening. As always, please like, subscribe, follow. If it resonates, 5-star reviews really, really, really mean the world to us. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.